And this use of our free will to turn towards God, to, as you said, have that desire to just to know or yearn for freedom. Is this also what you meant by the both end, that it's our part using our free will, but it's God's grace that then will shower upon our life? So I wonder if you could share a little bit, because you talk about this in the book, about the goal of the spiritual path being ego transcendence and the use of positive ego transcendence. The yogic path is not about suppression. So could you speak a little personally? How does that work for you to positively transcend the ego, and any suggestions you would give to other aspirants?
Well, I find it helpful because this was my own upbringing. I find it helpful to share with students or friends that all of us, to some degree, and this is East and West, it's not just Christians or whatever think it's a Christian issue, but it isn't. We've inherited a consciousness of ego suppression. Okay, the world is evil. You, in the olden days, in the medieval times, to have any spirituality, you had to reject, and this is true in the Orient too. You had to reject family life. You had to reject worldly life. You had to be, well, even like a Saint Francis. You had to be a monk. You had to live in poverty. You had to live in strict obedience and strict chastity and so forth. I'm not saying those things don't have their place, but what I am saying is that there's been an enormous shift in consciousness taking place. And in that shift, people are not particularly inspired to go that route anymore. I remember in the 50s and 60s in my growing up, because I grew up immersed in the Catholic tradition, I saw personally, and indeed I studied for the priesthood but turned my back on it. I saw dozens, and then later as I grew up, I read throughout the world, in Tibet, in India, in China, in America, in Europe, millions of monks and nuns left their vocation. There has been an enormous shift. Being nailed to a cross, I don't mean to demean or in any way negate the power, the beauty, the grace, and the immensity of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. But I don't know anybody. In fact, I sort of tongue-in-cheek joke with my Christian friends that they're all very happy Jesus died on the cross to save their sins so that they don't have to get up on a cross. And I get that, So there's been an enormous shift towards positive. We can be changed so much more easily because this is an age of energy. And when we put our energy, our willpower into something positive, finding like-minded people, meditating every day, being generous and serving our community, having a prayerful life. When we can put our energy into positive things, the transformation, frankly, is far more dynamic, far more satisfying. That's what I've learned. That's why I turned my back on that old tradition. Not in the kind of disdain that you find with so many so-called recovering Christians. With gratitude, I turned my face to a positive direction of Ananda means joy. And we say every Sunday at our Sunday service, whereas in the past the coin of man's redemption was pain and suffering, for us the payment has been exchanged for calm acceptance and joy. That defines, really, or describes the movement of consciousness among truth-seeking souls, beginning in this age.
Thank you. That's wonderful. In helping us to not negate the world, but embrace it. Or maybe I'm remembering if it was Swami Kriyananda or Yogananda said, to enjoy things with the joy of God. So everything's are fanning that God remembrance, like you were talking about. Hriman, this has been an absolute delightful conversation. Are there any questions that you wish I asked that I haven't?
The subject of reincarnation and its place in the Christian history and teachings is a very important one. Although you don't have to believe in that necessarily, but in terms of understanding, which we, with our scientific mindset, we so thrive upon, is something I'd like to leave for people as worthy of research. I'm thinking people with whom that might be unfamiliar, or a Christian who's sincerely seeking a higher path or a more expanded path. That's something that needs to be confronted, or at least be open to at some point. Chapter 35 of Yogananda's autobiography of a yogi is a wonderful introduction, taking quotes from the New and Old Testament, showing that and this can be historically, scholastically proven too, but showing how the understanding of reincarnation was right there for people with ears to hear. So I think I would offer that.